When I use Photoshop, I spend the bulk of my time in the layers panel, and that is because layers are really at the heart of any good workflow in Photoshop. So let's take a look a little bit at what layers are, what they do, and why they're so crucial to working effectively in Photoshop. I have here this layers test.psd image open, and I also have the interface guide layer.psd file open as well. We'll get to that one in just a second. But I have here this background layer, and that's all that's showing here. I just have one layer. And with that selected, I'm going to choose a paintbrush here, actually the paintbrush, the brush tool. Then I'm going to click on the foreground color swatch to open the Adobe Color Picker. And to select a color with the color picker, I first want to pick a hue. So basically a color family. I do that with this vertical slider here. I'm just going to pick some vibrant green. And then once I pick a hue, I need to come over here and pick the exact tint and shade of what I am looking for. So if I go to the left, I'm going to get more desaturated colors. So all of the colors on the left edge are gray, and all of the colors on the right edge are very vibrant. If I go up, I'm going to be brightening the colors. If I go down, I'm going to be darkening the colors. So if I want a color that's super bright and vibrant, I'm going to click and drag into the upper right-hand corner. And you don't have to click and drag. You actually can click anywhere you want. So to click in the upper right-hand corner, get a vibrant green, click OK, and then start painting a little bit. Now you'll notice as I have this little thumbnail here, it gives me a preview of what's on my layer, that I still have just one layer. Now what if I want to move that paint stroke? What if I want to recolor it? Well, because it's on this one layer, I'm really stuck. I can't really do anything without a lot of extra effort. So the solution is to put this on a separate layer. So in order to do that, I need to back up, go to the edit menu and choose undo brush tool. I can also choose Command Z or Control Z or step backward in order to undo this. So now I'm going to do this the right way by going down to the bottom of the layers panel and do something that you will do all the time in Photoshop over and over again. The bottom of the layers panel, there is this little icon, which is a little page with the corner flap turning up. So click that icon, and this creates a new blank layer. Now, we have these little eye icons next to the layers. In order to turn off a layer's visibility, just click the eye icon, kind of poke it in the eye there, and that turns it off. And now all we're seeing here is this gray and white checkerboard. Now, this gray and white checkerboard really isn't anything. It's Photoshop's way of telling you that there is nothing here. So whenever you see that gray and white checkerboard, unless you've somehow created this gray and white checkerboard yourself, it basically is Photoshop's way of telling you that this is completely empty. So I'm going to turn back on the background layer, and you'll notice that if I click one layer, it highlights. And that means that that is the selected layer, and this is extremely important to be aware of, that we have the correct layer selected. So I'm going to select layer 1, and making sure that I have my brush tool selected and my green foreground color, because the brush tool will use the foreground color as its ink. Now I can go and scrub. And now, because they are two separate layers, I have all kinds of power. I can click this thing in the eye and turn its visibility off and on. I could also go up to our move tool and move this around separately from the black. And it just gives me so much more power and flexibility down the road. If I decide that I don't like this layer, I can drag it to the trash can and all kinds of stuff. I'm actually going to hit Command Z or Control Z on the PC to undo that. Let's go ahead and make another layer. Let's get some practice in here. I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layers panel, click this icon again, make another new layer. Let's go ahead and change the color, the foreground color. And I'm going to choose, I don't know, some kind of cool purple, I guess. Click OK. Go back to my brush tool, select that. And now I'll paint something this way. Actually, I'm going to cover up the green fairly good here so you can tell that one's overlapping the other. And now we have two layers. And because, again, they're on separate layers, we can turn on and off the visibility of the purple stroke or on and off the visibility of the green stroke. And also, here's another trick. We can click and drag one layer to be underneath another layer. Now, once I get it into position, you'll see that this divider line highlights. So right now it's not highlighted. Photoshop doesn't know what I'm trying to do. And as I drag up, there we go. I get that highlight, and now I can let go, and now it reorders. And the green paint is on top of the purple paint. So you see how they reorder as layers are on top of one another. And you don't have this kind of power if you paint all on the same layer or whatever else you do on the same layer. So every little separate element that I make, I want to make sure that it's on its own separate layer for the maximum flexibility. Now, this is obviously a very simple example that we basically started from scratch with. Let me show you a little bit more powerful example that's a little bit more typical of a real world scenario. So I'm going to go over to the interface guide layer.psd file, and this is the layered version of what we've been working with in this chapter. And you can see as I scroll down here, we've got a lot of layers. And this is actually very common to have this many layers or significantly more when you're working in real world projects. In order to see more of the layers panel and more of my layers, I'm going to double click the name of the adjustments panel and of the color panel to collapse those. And now I can see more of my panels at a glance. Now, when you have this many layers, it can get hard to manage. So there's some extra tools here. At the top of the layers panel, we can sort by the kind of image. So if we want to look at pixel-based layers, we can click on that and then click that again to see all of our layers. We can see just adjustment layers, which we haven't talked about yet. And a lot of these things won't make too much sense, but just be aware that you can sort by these different types of objects here. So shape layers, for example, we can see all of our shape layers and click it again to see all of our other layers. So a real handy way to get to the layers you're looking for quickly. Now we also might want to organize our layers. So I'm going to scroll down to the menu arrow layer, click that, and actually you can click the visibility for this layer just to see that it's this layer here, the little arrow above the word menu or menus. And I could click this layer to select it and then shift click, in other words, hold shift and click the shape 1 layer so that all 3 of these layers are selected. And then I can drag these layers down to this little folder icon and let go, and it makes a group. I could double click the word group to rename this layer arrows. That's the same way we name a layer, just a regular old layer or a layer group. That's how we do it. We double click the name. And if I click this little disclosure triangle here, it opens up the folder. And now we can see all of our layers. We still have all the same flexibility, but we just have them nice and tidy in this little folder. So if this were actually a real project I was doing and I wasn't wanting to show you all these layers, I would have all these objects grouped into layer groups in these folders just to make sure that things were a little bit more nice and tidy. And finally, when we have a layer such as this empty junk layer that I intentionally created and named empty junk so we know we could throw it away. If we want to delete a layer, we can do 2 things. We can click on the trash can to click delete, but then we have this reminder that says, or this little pop-up that confirms, are you sure you want to delete the layer? And this kind of gets annoying unless we check don't show again. I'm just going to check no on this. What I like to do is just click and drag that layer down to the trash, and there's no pop-ups, no confirmations. It's just deleted and gone. There's one more thing I want to show you really quickly. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, we can see that there is this layer called background. It's a black layer. It's just a black background here. And it has this little padlock. Actually, it looks more like a handbag, but it's supposed to be a padlock. And if I were to click the move tool here in the tools panel, and then if I were to click and drag on this layer, it seems like I'm able to move it. But once I let go, this thing says, could not use the move tool because the layer is locked. Click OK. So basically what happens is when you bring in any file, any photo, any layer, the first layer is always a background layer and it's locked so you can't make changes on it. And Photoshop is kind of doing that just to kind of help you out, just to make sure that you don't ruin your original material. But if I do want to ruin my original material, I can just double click this layer kind of by the padlock here, just double click it. And that converts the background layer, which is locked, into layer 0 or whatever else you want to call it. I could just call this black background and click OK. And now the lock is gone. It's no longer a background layer. It's just a regular old layer. And I could use my move tool and I can move this wherever I want. So those are the basics of working with layers. As much as you can master layers, the better you're going to be at Photoshop.